The unwanted vanguard. The first Vril ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. Massive obsidian vessels that hung in the sky like volcanic glass sculptures, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Humanity's defense fleets responded with everything they had. Railguns, plasma batteries, nuclear-tipped missiles. The Vril didn't even bother to dodge. Their shields absorbed our most devastating weapons like a stone absorbs dewdrops. 7 hours later, London, Beijing, and Sao Paulo were smoking craters. 3 billion dead in less than a day. Commander Maya Chen watched the casualty reports scroll across her terminal, her face illuminated by the screen's cold blue light. She sat alone in her small apartment on Luna Base, drinking whiskey that no longer burned going down. 3 years ago, she'd been the rising star of the United Earth Defense Force, commanding her own destroyer. Now she was a civilian consultant, reduced to watching humanity's fall from the sidelines. Her court-martial and dishonorable discharge had been swift and thorough. Refusing a direct order to bombard a civilian settlement suspected of harboring insurgents had ended her career. Failure to follow the chain of command undermines the very foundation of military discipline. They'd said at her trial. Maya still believed she'd done the right thing. The settlement had turned out to contain no insurgents at all, just refugees. Her comm unit chirped, displaying an encrypted channel she hadn't seen in years. Military High Command. Chen here. Admiral Takayama's weathered face filled the screen. Once her mentor, now one of the people who had signed off on her discharge. We're losing, Chen. Every colony, every outpost. Earth itself will fall within months if this continues. Maya's laugh was hollow. And you're calling me? Did you run out of officers willing to follow orders? We've run out of options. Takayama's expression didn't change. I need someone who thinks differently. Someone who understands when rules need to be broken. Maya took another drink. What do you need from a disgraced ex-commander? Not ex. As of 800 hours, you've been reinstated. Full rank and privileges. Takayama's expression hardened. We have a plan. It's desperate, possibly suicidal, and definitely against several provisions of the Geneva Conventions. That's why we need you. 2 days later, Maya stood before the blast doors of Tartarus Maximum Security Prison, an asteroid facility in the belt housing the worst criminals humanity had produced. Murderers, terrorists, war criminals, people deemed too dangerous to remain in society. Project Disposable, Takayama had called it. Give the worst of us a chance to die for something worthwhile. Maya's new second-in-command, Lieutenant Wei, shifted uncomfortably beside her. You sure about this, Commander? These people are animals. I'm not sure about anything anymore, Maya replied as the massive doors began to grind open. But if animals are what we need to fight monsters, then so be it. The smell hit them first, recycled air, sweat, and desperation. A phalanx of guards escorted them to the central atrium, where 500 prisoners had been gathered. Maya climbed onto a makeshift platform and faced the sea of hostile faces. My name is Commander Maya Chen. I'm here to offer you a choice. The silence that followed was thick with suspicion. The Vril have destroyed our major cities and are systematically wiping out human colonies. At the current rate, humanity will be extinct within a year. Maya let that sink in. I'm forming a special combat unit. Volunteers only. You'll be armed, trained, and sent against the Vril. A muscular woman with a scar bisecting her face stepped forward. What's in it for us? Anyone who survives their tour receives a full pardon. All crimes expunged. Maya met the woman's gaze. And you get to save your species. The scared woman laughed. Society threw us away. Why should we die for it? You're not dying for society, Maya replied. You're fighting for human survival. The Vril don't care about your criminal record. They'll kill you just the same. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I'm Diana Reese, the scared woman said. Doing 20 life sentences for bombing the World Council. My victims were the same government tights who locked us up here. She spat on the floor. But I've always been human first. I'm in. Slowly, hands began to rise across the crowd. By the end of the day, Maya had 430 volunteers. Project Disposable was underway. The training was brutal and compressed. 2 weeks to turn hardened criminals into a cohesive fighting force. The conventional military tactics Maya had learned at the academy were useless. These weren't disciplined soldiers, but they were survivors, adaptable and vicious. They'll never be a regular army, Lieutenant Wei observed during a rare break. Maya watched as Diana Reese expertly disassembled and reassembled a plasma rifle, coaching others through the process. They don't need to be. The regular army is losing. We need something the Vril haven't seen before. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Elias Gantry, serving multiple life sentences for serial killing, had been a theoretical physicist before his hobby was discovered. The Vril ships, their hulls are made of some kind of crystalline material, he explained, pointing to footage captured by dying Earth ships. They vibrate at specific frequencies to maintain their structural integrity. How does that help us? Maya asked. Gantry's smile was unsettling. Everything has a resonant frequency, Commander. Find it, and even the strongest materials can shatter. 3 days later, modified sonic weapons were being distributed to the newly christened Disposable Battalion. Untested, experimental, and deemed too unreliable for regular forces, perfect for a suicide mission. Their target was Proxima Colony, one of humanity's oldest and most important outposts. The Vril had captured it a week earlier and were using it as a staging ground for attacks deeper into human space. Intelligence suggested they were converting the colony's massive fusion plant for their own purposes. As their transport ship approached Proxima, Maya addressed her troops for what might be the final time. No speeches about glory or honor, she said. You were forgotten by society. Written off. Disposed of. But today, you have something no one can take away. A choice. To fight not just for your own lives, but for every human being. She looked at their faces, these killers and monsters who now represented humanity's last hope. They call us disposable. Let's show them just how wrong they are. The battle for Proxima Colony was chaos incarnate. The Vril, 8-foot insectoid creatures with chitinous armor and 4 arms, had never faced an enemy that didn't retreat. The Disposables fought with a savagery that shocked even Maya. Diana Reese led a squad that penetrated the colony's administrative center, using the modified sonic weapons to devastating effect. The high-frequency pulses caused the crystalline components of Vril technology, and eventually the Vril themselves, to fracture and crumble. Gantry had been right. The Vril, for all their advanced technology, had a fundamental weakness. Their biology and technology shared the same crystalline structure, and once the resonant frequency was found, they were vulnerable. Maya's command post was overwhelmed 3 hours into the battle. She found herself fighting side by side with Wei and a cluster of prisoners, including a former cannibal who took a Vril barb meant for her. Why? She asked him as he bled out. Never been. Needed before, he whispered before dying. By the time Earth reinforcements arrived, the battle was over. Proxima Colony had been reclaimed. Of the 430 disposables who had landed, 178 survived. The Vril forces, over 1,000 strong, had been completely destroyed. It was humanity's first victory since the invasion began. As Maya surveyed the carnage, Diana Reese approached, her face streaked with blue Vril blood. Still think we're animals, Commander. Maya looked at the former terrorist, who had led the charge that turned the tide of battle. No, I think you're soldiers. The best I've ever served with. Diana nodded, a complex emotion crossing her face. What's next? Maya looked up at the stars, where more Vril ships waited. We take the fight to them. All of us. The unwanted, the cast-off, the disposed of. Maybe that's what humanity needed all along. Redemption's edge. The news spread quickly throughout what remained of human space. Proxima Colony reclaimed by an elite Earth force. Military channels buzzed with excitement, and for the first time since the Vril appeared, humanity allowed itself to hope. The truth was more complicated. High Command classified the exact nature of the disposable battalion. Official records listed them as Special Response Unit Delta. Their criminal pasts were erased from public knowledge, not out of respect, but from fear of civilian backlash. On the retrofitted prison transport ship, now rechristened ESS Redemption, Maya faced mounting problems. The disposables had tasted freedom and victory. They'd proven their worth. Some began to question why they should continue fighting for a society that had condemned them. "We've fulfilled our end of the bargain," said Thomas Ruiz, a former drug cartel enforcer who had emerged as a natural squad leader. "Proxima was supposed to be a suicide mission. We survived. We won. When do we get our pardons?" Maya had been expecting this. The deal was a full tour, not a single battle. Humanity is still at war. The growing tension was interrupted by the arrival of their next mission briefing. The Vril had adapted quickly to their defeat at Proxima. They were modifying their crystalline technology, varying the resonance frequencies to reduce vulnerability to the sonic weapons. They're learning, Maya told her officers, a mix of military personnel and former inmates who had demonstrated leadership abilities. Which means we need to evolve too. Elias Gantry, now serving as their chief science officer, had been studying Vril technology recovered from Proxima. Their ships, their weapons, even their bodies. It's all based on the same fundamental technology, self-replicating crystalline structures that can be programmed for different functions. "How do they reproduce?" Diana asked, always focused on finding weaknesses. "They don't. Not as individuals," Gantry explained. "The crystals grow and are shaped. The Vril we're fighting are more like tools. Drones." "Tools for what?" Maya asked. Gantry's eyes gleamed with the excitement of discovery. "I believe there's a central intelligence, a hive mind or controlling entity." This revelation changed everything. If they could locate and neutralize the controlling intelligence, the drone armies might become inert, or at least uncoordinated. Their opportunity came sooner than expected. A Vril armada was gathering at Jupiter's Forge, humanity's largest shipyard, captured in the early days of the invasion. Intelligence suggested something massive was being constructed there. As the Redemption approached Jupiter, tension on board reached breaking point. A faction led by a former political terrorist named Jackson staged an attempted mutiny, demanding immediate release. "We've done enough," Jackson shouted, holding Lieutenant White at gunpoint on the bridge. "The military can finish this fight. We've earned our freedom." Maya faced him calmly. "Look out there," she said, pointing to the viewport where Jupiter's massive form loomed. "The Vril are building something that could wipe out what's left of humanity. There won't be any freedom to return to if they succeed." Diana Reese, who had remained loyal, added her voice. "We were nothing but numbers in cells before this. Now we're the only ones who can save everyone. That means something." The standoff ended when Ruiz, who had been sympathetic to Jackson's complaints, made his choice. He disarmed Jackson with brutal efficiency. "I didn't survive Proxima to die in a mutiny," he said. "Commander Chen has kept her word so far. We finish this mission, then we talk about going home." With order restored, they completed their approach to Jupiter's Forge. What they found stunned even the most hardened among them. The Vril had converted the massive shipyard into a crystalline structure of impossible complexity. At its center pulsed a formation that resembled a brain, if brains were made of living crystal and the size of a small moon. "That's it," Gantry whispered. "The controlling intelligence. It must have arrived recently." Maya understood immediately. This is why they needed the shipyard. They're not building ships. They're housing their leader. The plan came together quickly. A direct assault would be suicide, but Maya had never intended to play by conventional rules. The Redemption would deploy the disposables in small, stealth shuttles, bypassing the main Vril forces to strike directly at the crystalline brain. "This is a one-way trip," Maya told them honestly. Even if we succeed, extraction will be nearly impossible. She expected resistance, complaints, perhaps another mutiny attempt. Instead, she found resolution. We were all dead anyway, Diana said, speaking for many. At least this way, we die for something that matters. The assault began with a diversionary attack by what remained of Earth's fleet. As real forces moved to engage, the disposable shuttles slipped through gaps in their defenses, heading for the central structure. They lost 3 shuttles during the approach. The survivors landed in different sections of the crystalline brain, fighting their way toward the center where Gantry theorized the controlling consciousness would be located. Maya led her team through corridors of living crystal that seemed to pulse with malevolent awareness. Vril drones swarmed them from all directions. The sonic weapons still worked, but less effectively. The Vril had indeed adapted. Ruiz's team was the first to be overrun. Through broken comm transmissions, Maya heard him detonate his unit's entire supply of explosives, taking a critical section of the structure with him. Diana's group reached the central chamber first, securing it long enough for Maya, Gantry, and what remained of their squad to arrive. What they found defied easy description. A pulsating crystalline entity that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human senses could perceive. That's it, Gantry said, his voice filled with scientific awe despite the circumstances. The Vril Overmind. They had brought a prototype resonance bomb, designed to amplify the effect of their sonic weapons exponentially. But as they prepared to set it, the chamber sealed itself. Crystalline growths began forming over the exits, trapping them inside. It knows what we're trying to do, Maya realized. The air itself seemed to vibrate as the Overmind communicated, not in words, but in sensations that translated into understanding. It regarded humans as vermin, an infestation to be cleared away so the crystal civilization could expand. It had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, and none had resisted as effectively as these primitives. It was almost impressed. Set the bomb, Maya ordered, even as crystalline spikes began erupting from the floor, impaling 2 of her remaining soldiers. Diana worked feverishly to prime the device, while Gantry made last-minute adjustments to its frequency. It needs to be placed directly against the central node, he explained, and someone needs to manually activate it. The crystalline interference prevents remote detonation. Maya understood what that meant, a suicide mission within a suicide mission. I'll do it, she said. Diana shook her head, taking the bomb from Gantry. No, you're needed to lead whatever comes after this, to make sure they remember what we did here. She looked around at the surviving disposables. What all of us did. Before Maya could argue, Diana charged toward the central node, dodging crystalline projectiles. She reached the pulsating heart of the Overmind and slammed the bomb against it. For humanity, she said, looking back at Maya one last time before pressing the activation sequence. The explosion wasn't visible in the conventional sense. Instead, a wave of resonant energy pulsed outward, causing the crystalline structures to vibrate at their breaking frequency. Cracks spread through the chamber, through the entire structure, through the Vril ships in orbit. Maya and the survivors barely escaped as the entire complex began to disintegrate. Of the 112 disposables who had participated in the assault, 17 made it back to Earth. The Vril threat wasn't completely eliminated. There were still ships and drones in distant parts of the solar system and beyond. But without their Overmind, they were disorganized and vulnerable. For the first time, humanity was winning the war. 1 month after the Battle of Jupiter's Forge, Commander Maya Chen stood before the World Council, the same body that had convicted many of her disposables. Project Disposable was conceived as a way to use expendable human resources in a desperate situation, said Admiral Takayama, introducing her. It has become the salvation of our species. Maya stepped forward, her uniform adorned with new medals that felt hollow compared to what had been sacrificed. The men and women who fought under my command were labeled as monsters, as irredeemable, she began. Society had thrown them away. Yet when humanity faced extinction, they chose to fight, not for pardon, not for recognition, but because even after everything they had done and everything done to them, they remained human at their core. She unveiled a memorial plaque listing every member of the disposable battalion who had died in the war. These names will be remembered as heroes, not criminals. The survivors will receive the pardons they were promised, but more importantly, they deserve our respect and gratitude. The council voted unanimously to establish a permanent monument. The former prisoners who had survived were given full pardons and offered positions in the reconstruction efforts. Many accepted, finding purpose in rebuilding what they had helped save. Maya visited Diana Reese's empty grave on the one-year anniversary of the victory. There had been nothing to bury, but humanity needed its symbols. "You were right," she said to the marker. "You were always human first." As she turned to leave, she found Elias Gantry waiting. The former serial killer had become a leading researcher in crystalline technology, using viral remnants to develop new medical and environmental tools. "Was it worth it?" he asked, "using the worst of us to save everyone?" Maya considered the question. "I don't think there were ever worst or best of us. Just people who made terrible choices, then made one incredible choice that redeemed them." Gantry nodded thoughtfully. "The Vril saw us as primitives, as lesser beings. They never understood that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our military might." "No," Maya agreed, looking up at the stars where humanity was already beginning to venture forth again. "It's our capacity to change, even though society had given up on proof that." "No heroes," Gantry said, "only survivors." Maya smiled slightly. "Sometimes that's enough."